name is Taylor Lucas, and welcome to The Nerdworm, a podcast where we look at the history of different books and answer the question of if the book is even worth being part of a school curriculum. Today's book is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. This book has been on my list of one of the books to talk about, and I'm excited to share my thoughts and opinions about this book. First, we're going to go through the history of it, then we're going to look at the theme and significance, including the main moral, and lastly determine if this book is good enough to be taught in schools. Let's get started. First off is the history of this book. The Awakening is about a woman by the name of Edna Pontier, and her journey of becoming a free woman and exploring her sexual desires through affairs and gaining independence from her husband. Chopin has discussed that during this time she felt trapped and wanted to write a story that expressed how she felt. Through the eyes of Edna, we see a very neutral look onto her world, and she never really sways from one side of feminism to the other. Chopin wrote this book to be in the middle and non-judgmental towards the reader or any woman who are reading this at this time. I think it's also worth mentioning that this novel was published during the middle of the Progressive Era, a moment in time where women were finally gaining rights and becoming their own person. However, despite what many think, this book is not advocating for feminism, and it's not the main reason that it was written. It was instead written, as mentioned earlier, to express the author's sexual desires and how she felt during this time era. Because of her writing such a unique book, she received tons of backlash and controversy over it. Most of it, most likely from men, because at this time they thought they were the boss and sole reason that the earth was revolving, and women felt very trapped in their presence because of that. Although, despite all this backlash and not winning any rewards in her lifetime, this novel has inspired many people to create things similar to it, including a stage production of The Awakening, amongst many other works inspired by her stories. Now that we've talked about the history of the book, let's now go into that classic high school English class teacher moment of talking about the themes and symbolism and all the stuff that this book is really worth noting for. As I was reading this book, I've noticed that there was a lot of very well done themes and symbolism throughout, one of these being Edna's suicide. We first see Edna breaking away from her day-to-day life on chapter 10, page 32, where it says, "A feeling of exultation overtook her, as if some power of significant import had been given her to control the working of her body and her soul. She grew daring and reckless, overestimating her strength. She wanted to swim far out, where no woman had swum before." I think it's clear that this moment is very clear foreshadowing to Edna's suicide at the end of the book, where she essentially just swims very far out into the ocean and thinks about all of her actions leading up to this point. In English literature, water typically means rebirth and becoming a new person, and that is exactly what we see at the end of the book. We see Edna go into the ocean, and this proves the point that she is a completely new person than she was at the very beginning of the book, than the first Edna that we met, because the first Edna that we met, she was this self-conscious person who believed that every woman has a job, and that is to fulfill the man. And at the end of the book, we see that she does not believe that at all anymore. That she believes that she is her own person. And personally, I think that's really powerful, especially considering that the women at this time were dedicated to the man, that their whole life was dedicated to their husband. And to have someone like Kate Chopin come onto the scene and basically say, "Hey woman, leave your husband." Well, probably not leave your husbands, but like, she was super powerful during the women's suffrage movement because she wrote a lot of novels, a lot of short stories that told women that they need to claim their independence in a way that was really unaccepted by men at this current time. Moving on though, let's talk about the main moral of this story. I think it's fair to say that the main moral of this story is for women to claim their independence and set themselves apart from their husbands. Although I also think that that is a very surface level moral of the story, and that there's definitely something deeper and beyond that. Another moral of this story is to explore yourself and allow yourself to try new things. In the story, Edna goes on multiple affairs in order to explore her sexual desires. And I think that is a way of Kate Chopin telling her audience that they need to do the same. Maybe not in the same way that she did, but to explore she's telling her audience to explore themselves and give themselves a chance to try something completely different. I can't name the amount of people that I've met where they won't try something simply because they've never tried it. Me personally, I like to live by a motto that is, I will try everything once. And if you recognize that, yes, that is from the reboot of Animaniacs, and I don't know, it just stuck with me. It stuck with me that that is something that I need to do. And I think that is definitely something that Kate Chopin is telling her audience to do. Honestly, that's kind of all that I have for themes and symbolism for this book. I think there is a lot of very good symbolism, a lot of good themes, and definitely a good main moral of the story, for sure. So now, let's move on to the big question that we have been bringing up all the evidence that leads us up to this point. Should this book be part of the school curriculum or not? Now, I won't lie. When I was first reading this book, I did think to myself that it should not be taught in the school curriculum, purely for the fact that it doesn't apply today. In today's standards, women are now viewed as more independent and honestly just viewed way better than they were back in 1899. And now that I've given it a lot more thought, I've now decided that that's exactly the reason that it should be taught in school. I definitely think this book should be taught in our English curriculum for the same reason that history is taught for like 3 years of an average person's high school career. History is mainly taught in schools because it allows children to see what other people have been through, and it teaches them to not let history repeat itself. And yes, we do have a whole unit dedicated to women's suffrage. However, a lot of that touches base on things that were done during the women's suffrage movement. But I've noticed that they've never really explained how they got to that point. They've always shown that the 19th Amendment was given to women, but they never shown how it got to that point. They've never shown the thoughts and feelings of the woman during this time. However, that's exactly what Kate Chopin does. She gives the woman a voice, and it gives them several novels and short stories that allow them to be able to relate to the stories and to the characters and be like, hey, that's something I'm going through right now. I don't think this person should go through it, so why should I? So yeah, I think that really wraps up the podcast for today. We went through the background and history behind The Awakening by Kate Chopin. Then we talked about the symbolism and the good morals of the story. And lastly, decided that it should be a part of the English curriculum. Honestly, this book is a great read, and if you're looking for something to inspire you to do what you want to do and not let anybody else tell you otherwise, then it is absolutely a good read, especially considering the history behind it. I think the history behind this book is incredibly important to learn about, and women's suffrage just in general. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on it, and remember to stay nerdy. Bye-bye!